John, at the time you committed your crime, you had a good job, making good money, you're intelligent and capable. Why did you do it?
Well, that's quite a question, Ray. I had served a previous sentence for a military offense, but I felt that that was part of the war, that I myself was not a criminal, and that was outside of me. So I think I was as much shocked as anyone when I committed this offense that put me here in Atlanta. I spent the first 4 or 5 years looking for the reasons, because I had come to the conclusion that it certainly was my fault. There was something wrong with me. I taught psychology classes here in the school for 4 years, doing my own digging along with that. And I think, Ray, in fact I'm sure, that going back through my life, I found a parallel, that 4 or 5 times I had committed similar actions, and always with the same feeling. My feeling was that, well, you might say it's a form of suicide. I wanted to hurt you, of course someone close to me, myself, as punishment for hurting you, we'll say, and then I wanted to feel sorry also at the same time, you see. And I think that doesn't just apply to me, but I think that that's a reason perhaps for many men being here. It's a form of self-destruction, reach the point where you don't care. Money is not involved in the crime. Money isn't involved in my crime and the crimes of many men here. They're outlets for problems that we can't solve, that we can't face, and so we seek an escape. Some people find their escape in narcotics or alcohol or some other such form. Evidently, I found my escape through crime. I think that I found the root of the problem, though, that I know why I acted in this manner, and I don't think that I'll react to the same situations again in a similar manner. I think I'll be able to block those situations before they occur.
Good. Thank you, John. John, when do you first realize that you're in prison?
Well, for myself, Ray, I think the first 24 hours was the hardest. And I believe that's true of most men. The running is over, the tension, the trial, it's finished. And now this is for the first time that you sit down and you just relax. And then it all comes back to you, the crime itself, the trial, the years ahead, that you're going to be in this place and you don't know what it is yet. Then in the following days you get into the orientation, you become more acclimated to your surroundings, you begin to take part in the activities, and then it just becomes a routine one day after the other, more or less.
What's the hardest thing about being confined?
Ray, I think it's for myself at least, the complete lack of privacy. At no time are you alone. You're in a cell with 6 or 7 other men. You must get their feelings. You must put up with them. Then even your most intimate details of your life, there's always someone watching or someone near you. You never really have time to sit down and think by yourself.
make my same mistake.
George, you've been out 7 times and back in. What happens when you get out?
Well, usually when you first get ready to go out and get out, you have a lot of good intentions. You anticipate staying out. I've never wanted to come back, but I usually wind up back. You get a job, sometime a good one, and after you work up into a decent position that you enjoy, you find out that you cannot be bonded, that the company's insurance will not carry you on account of being an ex-convict, and you are gently let off the hook. And after about a couple times of this, for me, is usually enough. I wind up on a drunk or wind up back in Skid Row or with the characters who will accept me, who know my language, who know my troubles, guys that understand me.
How do you work back in with them?
Oh, you usually get down in the corner somewhere. You see some guys who running around with flashy suits, and you meet them at different joints. You usually know all the joints in every big city. You pick that up. That's part of your education in the penitentiary. And they see you, know you've been on a drunk, you probably haven't shaved, clothes a little threadbare, and one will hand you $100 or a couple of hundred and tell you to get fixed up. And, puts you in a hotel, takes care of your wants. And in a short time, he's got a little job for you to do, nothing drastic, nothing you could get picked up for. Standing by, just watching the cop on the beat, and if he's coming your way, walk across the street, and eventually you get tired of being a flunky, and you drink enough, and forget the penitentiary, and you want to make a score of your own, and you're on the way back then.
I think the Alcoholics Anonymous has been one of the things now that has you on the right track. How did you come across that?
Well, I started with them on an angle, more or less. I was going to use them, and I tried that for a couple of years, and I'd come to the penitentiary, not even believing I was much of an alcoholic, but knowing to myself I did quite too much drinking, and wound up, I used them this time for me. I've got a lot of good this time out of them. It has given me a reason just for existing almost. I had nothing else, and I use it as a way of life.
What about the future, George?
I have a lot of hopes built up for it this time. I have learned a new way of life, as far as I am concerned. It's through the AA groups, through the affiliations I've had here in the institution. A lot of my thinking has been changed. The only trouble I have now is wondering whether I'm sincere all of the time, and I must constantly reevaluate or change my set of values as new situations arise, and I must test them out. This has been one of my remaining problems today, whether or not this sincerity is superficial or whether it is me. And I am inclined to think most of the time it is me, and that I stand a lot better chance of making it this time than I ever did.
I hope you do, George. Thanks. Perry, give me an example of a man who has taken your vocational training.
We had a young fellow who came in here for car theft, who was physically handicapped. And after a period of counseling and a series of tests, he chose radio and television repair.
Mr. Meek, how many men are taking training under your educational department?
Approximately half of the men in the institution are taking some phase of educational work in the institution, or approximately 1,250 men.
Are they all volunteers?
They're all volunteers except those who test below 5th grade level, and they are compulsory and must attend school 1/2 day each day.
Is create a much more difficult problem because of the.
Most people feel that they can pick out a criminal just from the way he looks. Anyone who visits Atlanta Federal Penitentiary would find that not to be the case. Yet looks do play a part in a man's criminal tendencies. What do you do about that here, Doctor?
We use plastic surgery. We attempt to improve a man's appearance so that it'll give him more pride and self-respect when he goes out. I can give you an example of a case who came with a double hair lip, whose teeth protruded through this hair lip defect. He was gave such a poor appearance that the other inmates refused to eat at the same table with him. So we removed his teeth, fixed him a partial plate, repaired his hair lip. The man grew a mustache, and you could hardly tell that he'd ever had a hair lip before. He was very proud of himself, and that has been several years ago, and he's gone out and hasn't come back.
Chaplain, how long does a man have to go straight before you're sure he's going to stay that way?
Raymond, that's a hard question to answer, for after all said and done, some of the men that leave here are rehabilitated and others are not. But I could cite you a case of a man that did make it.
How long?
Well, I take you back to 30 years ago.
This is Jerry Head, the supervisor of employment placement for some 8 southeastern states. Jerry, does every man who goes out of Atlanta Federal seek your help?
No. We have some who do not want employment placement help due to the fact that we reveal their entire records in detail to the employer in writing. If he has 25 arrests or formal convictions, we tell the whole story.
Warden, how much of a man's sentence must he serve before he is eligible for parole?
1/3 of his sentence.
Is there anyone not eligible for parole?
Well, recently, in particular last year, the Congress passed what they call the Narcotic Act of 1956, which means a man convicted twice of the felony of narcotics handling under certain statutes may not be eligible for parole. Otherwise, any person serving 1/3 of his sentence does have the eligibility. It does not mean he will be granted parole, of course.
What about a man who is serving a life sentence?
15 years, he is eligible.
Have there been any notable failures in the parole system?
Well, of course, there are a lot of heartbreaks in the business, and you're going to have some. We have a lot of satisfactions with it, too, but one failure I might mention was a fellow we had on our honor farm out here who worked at the piggery. He was released here in Atlanta, and he recruited some laborers, and they came out there in the dark of night. He knew the setup out there at the piggery, and stole about $300 worth of our pigs. He hauled them off and sold them down to the stockyard. Well, he was sent back then, of course, for stealing government property. And for some time, and up to this time even, when he goes in the dining room, they grunt at him. So, quite a case. That's a dramatic case of failure, I'd say.
Truly. Let's talk about the brighter side. What is the percentage of success in the parolees? How many of them don't
dealing
come back?
strictly with those who are paroled, there are several types of release. Now, on parole or conditional release, but parolees, I would say we have a pretty good percentage, about 80 to 85 on those actually released by method of parole now, not
in other
by
words,
conditional
4
release.
out of 5 men who go out on parole do not come back. What's your philosophy of running a prison, Warden?
I would say that above everything else, I feel a man has been punished by being sent here. And our job, our major job, is to prepare him for the outside because we know he's going back into your community or mine. We want him to be able to take his place on the competitive line from the standpoint of work, but above everything else, to be able to fit into the community. So I try to get a man to identify with good, wholesome groups of people so he can do it when he gets outside.
While I was in the penitentiary, I had a lot of doubts about whether the things I was learning would be enough to be successful after release. I was studying a new trade. I had some people coming in from outside to help me. There was more or less a spiritual awakening within inside of me, and I was really trying to dig at some of the reasons that caused me to be in the penitentiary in the first place.
Though you must have found those reasons, you have made it. What are some of the handicaps you've faced?
First of all, I found it impossible to establish credit. I didn't have money for furnishings, and I had to live in a furnished apartment. Still I'm living in a furnished apartment. Then there was a problem of loneliness. At first, when I was released, why, I didn't have any friends. Then I met a young lady who, she came to be my wife, and we've been pretty successful since then.